All right, folks, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us as we are here to start off the celebration. Honestly, I mean, everybody on LFA TV today has been doing this, but obviously tomorrow marks the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Some people call it the 4th of July, but we call it the 4th of July, but we also call it Independence Day. We're going to take a look at some of the news stories of the day. There's a lot of news stories to get to, but we're going to start by just, reminiscing about the good old 18th century and the Declaration of Independence. I was reading through the grievance list today, and as I was reading through the grievance list today, some of these things sound very familiar. I mean, some of these things are happening right now by our own government. The very things that we separated from Great Britain over are still happening today. We're going to talk about it. We've got also later in the show, I want to talk about, did you guys see where the rap music now is like no longer in the top 25? I'm sorry, the top 100, the Billboard top 100, top 40 for the first time since 1990. And some people are speculating this is because under the Trump administration, they got rid of all of that USAID funding. And so other people have now said, okay, wait a second, has the CIA ever funded things via USAID or whatever they want to call it in the past when it comes to art and entertainment? And actually the answer is yes, because we now know that the U.S. government CIA funded abstract art paintings like Jackson Pollock. We now know this. And so a lot of people are making interesting correlations. So I definitely want to cover that today. But first, we're going to celebrate Independence Day a little early. I've already got fireworks down here in Arkansas. We've already got fireworks going off yesterday. Really all week is what happens. I don't know if that happens where you're at. But let's get started. It is a special edition. America's 250th anniversary is tomorrow. The Paul Harrell program starts right now.
The Paul Harrell program.
Gentlemen, here we are, broadcasting live from the great state of Arkansas. Happy to be here on this Friday. Today, I believe, is federal holiday. I think the banks are closed today. This is the day that, because it's on a Saturday, people are choosing to observe, if you will. Let's see, we've got a few comments in the LFA chat. Moose for Trump. Moose for Trump says, hi, Paul. Hello, Moose. How are you guys? We've got Logue23 saying fireworks are amazing. Yes, they are. I actually have a friend of mine, a buddy of mine. Did I tell you guys this the other day? This guy's a veteran, and his friends thought it would be really funny to play a prank on him by firing one of those big mortars. You know how you can get the big boys, the fireworks, the ones that you drop in the tube or whatever, and then light. They thought it'd be funny last Saturday to launch one of those mortars over his house in, like at 2 a.m. Okay? That would be really funny to wake up a veteran who is a combat veteran from the wars in the Middle East at 2 o'clock in the morning with a giant explosion over his house. The only problem is these guys accidentally didn't aim right, and the firework mortar went through his front window of his house. He was in there with his wife. Obviously, it blew up. It's a miracle it didn't set the couch on fire, but it destroyed the couch, destroyed the TV, did at least like $12,000 worth of damage. And this guy's friends are lucky to be alive. Let's just put it that way. They are lucky to be alive. It's a crazy story. So on that, here's the public service announcement for any of you out there that are going to shoot fireworks. By the way, how many of you out there are going to shoot fireworks even though your city or municipality has an ordinance against shooting fireworks? I think that's one of the greatest, like one of the remnants of our American rebellious spirit, is that nobody cares what the city ordinance, everybody just says, we're going to shoot fireworks anyway, and there's just no way the law enforcement has enough manpower to come and arrest everybody. So then really nobody gets fined or arrested or whatever. It kind of makes you think what would happen if we just all quit paying taxes. What exactly would transpire if that happened. But anyway, I digress. Let's get some music in here. John Philip Sousa. Let's see. Let's go with. Hang on. Let's actually go with Semper Fidelis for this one. Here we go. There we go. Okay. All right. So I'm pretty patriotic guy when it comes to the 4th of July, celebrating Independence Day. We've got LabTech12E4 over in the LFA chat saying, watching from Indiana. Hello to all the great folks watching in Indiana, really all across the country. We got a great crowd in the chat today. Let's get into it, though. The Declaration of Independence, 250 years ago, signed tomorrow, July 4th. And let me throw this up on the screen here. I think it's just customary to do this. You guys have all read it, obviously. The grievances are really where I think are fascinating in terms of where we are today versus where we're going, the pitfalls, the possibilities, the promise, to quote Doc Brown from Back to the Future. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident. You know the thing. You know the thing. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. Don't you just know that, the words of literally the history behind our founding are absolutely terrifying to many in power today. Like the idea, and that's why I think the Revolutionary War, I mean, we remember the Revolutionary War, once a year, yeah, but I mean, it's really not a part of, in many cases, there's just many people that want us to forget our fathers, our forefathers, where we came from. They really want us to forget what compelled us to go to war with a tyrannical government, the most, powerful government on the face of the earth. Certainly, the naval power was unprecedented at that time. And they really want us to forget where we came from. I mean, so you start reading this, and I mean, we're to the point now, and you look, I mean, I know it was way worse with Biden. It would have been way worse. But I mean, we've established on this program, right, that the deep state, the intel oligarchy, has still not been brought to heel. There is an interagency war. I think there may be some good guys in there, but there's a lot of career communists, card-carrying communists, in my opinion, within our government still that haven't been purged. And don't you know, I mean, if it was up to them, and it's not just the intel oligarch, I throw the DOJ communists in there that have not been rooted out in the DOJ. Don't you just know that there are forces within the government that if you like the Declaration of Independence, not just for its historical relevance, but if you actually believe in the principles that the founders laid out, that yes, there is a point where it is the right of the people to alter or abolish their government because it's become so tyrannical. Don't you know there are people in our own government right now, still today, that want to label you a domestic terrorist for believing that there is a tipping point, for believing there is a Rubicon that you can't cross. Now, what is that Rubicon? Well, right now we're trying to figure out what that is, okay? The Supreme Court officially saying, hey, you can, if you're a blue state or a red state, but if you're a blue state, you can count ballots to forever until you get the desired outcome. Or, just because, somebody from Guatemala who's pregnant gets into the country, and now your birthright is a foreigner's birthright. So we've got election problems we know about. We now have essentially a country, the concept of a nation state being taken away, officially taken away. I mean, I know this policy's been going on for a long time under the, flawed interpretation of the 14th Amendment, but I don't know. There's a lot of things, a lot of things to discuss, a lot of things to think about, wherever that line is. I'll tell you, the people in Belfast, at least some of the people in Ireland know what that line is. Some of the people in Ireland have they've gone through the equation that we talk about on this program. Like, when do I quit overlooking blatant corruption, blatant injustice? When do I quit overlooking that the government is not punishing the wicked and guilty and protecting the innocent? And as a matter of fact, they're doing the opposite. We've got a video out of the UK showing you that later in the show today, if we have time for that. Like, when does that happen? Because there are fathers and strong men throughout the West that overlook the injustices all the time, and the reason why we overlook them is because we don't want to do anything that gets us killed, which would mean we would abandon our families, or get us put in jail, which would again be abandoning our families. But at what point, when you get to the point where you say, but if I do nothing, it's not going to matter, like, abandoning my family is now the lesser negative consequence, because if I do nothing, I'm consigning my family and their children and their grandchildren to slavery. That's when the tipping point happens. And it happened in the 18th century for these men who got together and voted on this document. By the way, if you've ever seen the musical, and I know it's corny and I know it was made in the 70s, but if you've ever seen the musical 1776, they made a TV version of that. You definitely need to check it out. Definitely need to check it out, because I'm a huge fan. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, by the way, I don't want to just gloss over the fact that there is actual theology in the Declaration of Independence. Again, that is also something that we know terrifies the left. I mean, we remember during the 2024 election, the MSNBC panels, the MS Now panels or whatever, that were very triggered by the idea that rights come from God. These people, many of them don't believe in God. Many of them do. They actually choose actively the other side, the Luciferian side. But the theology in this document is one of humility, because it recognizes that there is a God, there is a creator, and he's the one that bestows men rights, and it doesn't come from government. So fundamentally, now, do I think the Constitution, like going from 1776 to 1789, do I think there was a flaw in the United States Constitution? I do. I think they should have explicitly recognized the lordship of Jesus Christ in that document. Matter of fact, when the Confederate States of America were trying to write their Constitution, they left it out as well, and there were ministers that wrote to them saying, you guys have got to put the lordship of Jesus Christ in here. Now, Christianity was very much assumed. It wasn't explicit. The founders never thought, when they referenced the creator, that they're talking about Buddha or some Hindu god or Muhammad or something like that. They never even imagined that. It was just assumed that America was a for the most part a pan-Protestant nation with Maryland in there, and that was just assumed. And there's obviously things about the Constitution that are distinctly Christian. One of those being that when you go to veto a piece of legislation, Sundays don't count. The premier Christian holy day of the week, Sundays do not count against a president's time clock countdown to veto a piece of legislation from Congress. So we have things like that in there. But the theology of this document is terrifying to those who now don't believe in God, or those who believe that people get their affirmations, people want their lifestyles to be validated. They want the government to validate their lifestyles. the idea that there's a higher power than government makes people very, very upset, especially if you've got people that are more afraid, biblically speaking, of God than they are of men. It can cause them to rely on divine providence, which is what this document talks about, the sovereignty of God in making a very, very tough decision to go to war and spill someone else's blood. And when you fear God more than you fear man, and you understand the concept of a just war, this makes godless totalitarian tyrants very, very nervous. In a modern day context. Obviously, it made King George, and we're going to talk about King George here in just a second. So it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Then it says, prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. This is exactly what I was talking about. All right, I'm distracted by the music. Forgive me. I've got to get that out of here. That's exactly what I'm talking about with this equation that men, I think predominantly men, mostly men, generally men, go through in their heads. How do I protect my family? How do I best protect my family? How do I best protect my community, my church, my city, my county, my state, my nation? And so there is prudence in there. And that's what they're talking about, that we have shown, mankind shows that we are disposed to not do this, to not take up arms, to suffer while evils are sufferable. And not to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyrant over these states. To prove this, let the facts be submitted to a candid world. And this is where you get the grievances. But before we get to the grievances, I want to check your comments real quick. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Logue says, "Can we do live calls?" No, we still don't have. I still don't have the capacity to do live calls. I apologize. I'm going to have to get on that at some point. Let's see. We have CB Cheese says, "We are the only nation founded on God and, better yet, Jesus." We are and were a Christian nation. I think, admittedly, we have less Christians than we did as a percentage of the population, but we still are, and people know the truth, regardless of what the New York Times or whatever project they want to roll out to claim otherwise. And obviously, in the modern history, they're going to focus on the framers or the founders that are the least religious, or were like a Jefferson, who was more religious early, less religious later in life, and that sort of thing. But they will not highlight people like John Witherspoon, because they know the truth. All right, so here's the grievances. He has refused. Listen to this. This is pretty crazy. These grievances are kind of nuts. Think. Just put your modern hat on and think about this. So King George has refused to assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. Full stop. That's going on right now. Okay. We have two tiers of justice. We have laws that are for the wholesome and public good, the necessary and public good, and we have people that won't enforce them. We have judges that won't enforce them. We have men walking around completely naked in front of children at gay pride parades. No one arrests them. No one enforces the decency laws that are still on the books today. No one does anything about it. So that is obviously the case. But then you have the two tiers of justice. We have the obvious treason of our own government against the people, intel oligarchy, or the deep state, or whatever you want to call it. We're still waiting. We're still waiting for something to happen, but it should have happened a long time ago. And maybe it will. King George has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he is utterly neglected to attend to them. Okay, this just sounds like process and really some sort of 18th century legislative sleight of hand. The tricks, I don't know, the talking versus standing filibuster, or the constitutional standing filibuster versus the paperwork version comes to mind. King George has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. So in this case, King George was saying, look, I'll help you out, but you have to give up your right to be represented in a colonial legislature. Now, I mean, in terms of representation in a legislature, I do think you can bring up the recent Supreme Court decision that said you can't gerrymander by race, which exposed that for my entire life, the South, which I live in and love, has been politicking with one arm behind our back, tied behind our back by force. We've been politicking with basically a governor on our golf cart that limits, the top speed we can go at. And now you're seeing that undone. You're seeing a representation that's going to be more like New England, where they have 60-40 states in New England and they have no Republican representatives. We're now going to see the same thing happen, and we already have in Tennessee, stripping Memphis of their congressional seat. Thank goodness, by the way. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. You may beat the charges, you won't beat the ride. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions of the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. Now, you look at something like that and you think, how long has our border been left open? How long has our border been left open? How long have we been told that the states like Texas, I don't know if Texas will do anything anyway with Greg Abbott, but how long have we been told these border states don't have the authority to do what the federal government should do? Yeah. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriation of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing to assent of laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone. Judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. Now, it's of note, was the king really the one doing all this? Obviously, he was the head of state, but the king has advisors. The king has his own deep state, if you will, right? And you just look at these corrupt judges and how they're clearly loyal to anything other than the words of the laws, the words that are written on the page of our statutes. It is obvious. He's erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. Now, on that one, the modern-day army, ladies and gentlemen, in the 21st century is obviously the surveillance state. It is obviously the fact that, well, as I said when James Comey, was indicted, and everybody said, well, maybe Comey shouldn't have been indicted for 8647, or 8647. Maybe he shouldn't have been indicted for that. Maybe that's a charge that isn't really that. And it may not stick, But the way I look at it is somebody like James Comey, who is arguably the nation's one of the nation's top spooks, right? He's one of the nation's top intel agents, former director of the FBI, who commands respect and loyalty from the communists that are still embedded in our government. I look at James Comey as a modern-day general because the intel capabilities and the weaponization of government, those are the new weapons of war against the world and against the people of America. And so 8647 can easily be interpreted as a command to the forces loyal to James Comey within the government. To me, I think it's just a no-brainer. So that's just something to think about there. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power, so you have no choice in the matter. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. That reminds me of, now the Chevron deference has been ruled unconstitutional, but that does kind of remind you of over the years, the massive increase of executive authority, which is essentially a violation of the non-delegation clause of Article 1, Section 1 of our Constitution, where Congress abdicated their lawmaking ability and gave it to rule makers that if you break an executive office rule, then you can go to jail or pay a fine, just as if Congress had done it. It's insane. And so you keep going over here and you look at all of these grievances. Hang on. You got the quartering of troops, jurisdiction, mock trials, cutting off our trade with parts of the world, imposing taxes. Now, I just want to make this observation because it kind of struck me. You see that there? This is in the middle of the document. The middle of the grievances for imposing taxes on us without our consent. So the traditional line that you hear in school is that we did all of this for taxes, that we rebelled because of taxation without representation. And we certainly did. It's right here, for imposing taxes on us without our consent. But it's in the middle of the document. It's not the first grievance. The first grievance is he has refused to assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. King George just refuses to do what he should do. He deprived people of trial by jury for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretend offenses. Anyway, he goes on and on. All right, so towards the end, this is a weird one, but the second to last one did kind of strike me. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. That's pretty sick. That's pretty sick. So this was certainly a long train of abuses and usurpations. There's no doubt about it. And the document concludes, in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. And then they don't call him a king, they call him a prince. I think this is a slight. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature, Parliament, to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us, We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these United States, these united colonies are, and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And then we have, obviously, the signatories of the 13 states, the 13 colonies. Fascinating to read. And obviously, I read it before we came on the air. I hope, I don't know, I think it's good to read. I would encourage everybody to read it, the whole thing, because when you do, you recognize exactly what these people have been, what these people went through, and likewise, what we've gone through. Just looking here. So we've got Lucinuro over at the LFA chat says, we tried with votes. Next is weapons, I'm thinking. Well, you better get into... All I got to say about that is, because, I get it. And don't get me wrong. I'm literally talking about the tipping point. But does anybody have... Anybody know a guy that's really that's good with drone technology? Because at some point you think with the mass surveillance, this is why those people over in Belfast are leaving their phones at home, right? They're like, well, we got to leave our phones at home, but pretty soon that's not going to be a thing either. With the cameras everywhere, the flock cameras, and then you've got the AI and the facial recognition and everything else. It's I don't even know if it's possible. Is it possible? Because I do think there are people in Great Britain that have been like, okay, there's no other way. It's revolution or full on slavery. Is it even possible for first world citizens to overthrow their own government, their Western governments anymore? The way, and I don't know, barring some. Barring admitting that, parts of our government are actually not monolithic and, they're actually being organized structures within the governments doing something about it, whether it's military or something like that. I'm not so sure. Be careful this weekend, everybody. R-Star77, be careful this weekend, everybody. I think our enemies are planning and scheming something to our demise. Certainly do that. Also be careful with your fireworks. Inevitably, somebody right now has all 10 of their fingers, and come Monday they won't. Come Saturday night they won't. So just be careful. Let's try to get through the Independence Day fireworks without blowing ourselves up. Because it happens every year, and then of course you have the amazing viral moment where, "What you doing, Terry? Terry, what you doing, Terry?" Definitely need those. R Star says, I leave my phone at home a lot. You can also simply wrap your phone in aluminum foil. That works just fine. Also, do that at night so that you're not injured by an EMF. That'd be electromagnetic frequency. Yeah. Or you never know. Like, I mean, I also think about, like, I don't know. You also think about, like, you know, are there, can these things be, like, programmed to blow up on our nightstands or in our pockets? I've thought about that as well. I've thought about that as well. But here's the thing, though, about King George. Let's talk about King George just for a second on this special 250th anniversary episode, where tomorrow we will celebrate the signing of the Declaration that we just read. King George was in a little bit of a predicament that I think most people don't fully appreciate. And you really can't understand the predicament he was in unless you have some historical knowledge about the English Civil War that happened about 100 years earlier. And the fact, this is what's interesting. And by the way, there's a great movie on this, again, from the 70s with Sir Alec Guinness. And can never remember the guy that played Oliver Cromwell. But the movie's called Cromwell, and it's actually a really good movie about the English Civil War. But, you know, in your government schools that most of us went to, I went to government school. I'm sure many of you out there went to government school. In government schools, we didn't really learn about the English Civil War, and we really should. I think it should be a prerequisite to American history because these are our kin, these are our forefathers, and we should really understand the English Civil War in order to understand what led to the American Revolution. And the key point is this. King Charles kept messing with Parliament, and he kept convening Parliament, and he kept dissolving Parliament. And eventually, they had had enough. And Parliament came together, and they cut the head off of King Charles. Okay? King Charles was beheaded because of the English Parliament. It's a big deal. When I was in government school, the only thing we read about Oliver Cromwell, and it was a little blip on a 8x10 page. It was this little blip, and it said Oliver Cromwell was England's only dictator, and that's all we had to know about Oliver Cromwell. The only thing we had to know about Oliver Cromwell is England's only dictator, which is exactly what would happen if the Royalists got back in control and wrote history books for American children. And the Royalists obviously did get back in control because Oliver Cromwell was the only Lord Protector of the realm, dictator, and that's all she wrote about that. But if you go and you actually look up the English Civil War, it's fascinating, and you should definitely do it. And certainly, while you're reading about the English Civil War, go ahead and read about what was going on. Just in terms of Protestant denominations and things like that, it's just fascinating to me. I love it. But so King George, basically 100 years later, 1776, he's got this Parliament, and I don't think that the Declaration hammers King George, but they hammer the Parliament, but they don't really hammer the Parliament till the very end there. But the Parliament was a big force in this. The Parliament did not appreciate the idea that King George was at the top and Great Britain's Parliament is here, okay, down here, and then across the pond you have 13 other parliaments or legislatures. So the king's at the top and the Parliament's here, and then you've got all these over here, and that there was an equality there. They did not like this, okay? They did not like the idea that a state house in Virginia was on the same level as the Parliament in Great Britain, where they both pledged their fealty and loyalty to a king, and in turn, that king provides them with security and protection. Okay? Parliament didn't like that because it's Parliament. It's been around much longer than these other colonies. And the idea that Parliament can't have a say in what goes on in Virginia or Pennsylvania or New Jersey didn't sit well with them. And so Parliament is very much pressuring King George, and King George is on board with it, but, it's kind of like, absence makes the heart grow fonder. What's the closest legislative body to King George? Well, it's obviously the Parliament right there in the country, right? Not the other parties, 3,000 miles away. So this was the thing. And if you don't think for a moment that in the back of King George's mind, he didn't have King Charles on his mind, I mean, I think we can all agree. King George knew that, hey, they killed a king. This is a part, you can make Parliament mad enough to where they'll just chop your head off. Okay. So they know this. King George knows this. And so King George basically allows, he says, I am more loyal to the Parliament in the UK than I am in America or Great Britain at the time. And so what does this effectively make King George? Well, it makes King George an abdicator. It makes King George really in violation of his own laws, of his own system of government. King George was actually refusing to submit to his own structure of government. Parliament was also refusing to submit to their own rules. Because, again, it was a very simple operation. One king, 14 parliaments. One king, 14 legislative bodies. One of the legislative bodies says, no, we are not equal. And the king says, okay, you're not. And that is the problem. That really, to me, is the fundamental problem. And they say, okay, we got to go. Because the whole point of having a king is, yes, we agree, you get to run the state, but there are benefits from serving the king. And when he withholds those benefits, and not only withholds them, but also taxes you with that representation, doesn't want your legislatures to even meet, doesn't even agree with them, it's a very similar thing to what King Charles was doing to the Parliament. He just forgot. He never imagined that neglecting the Parliament of the American states would end in a similar circumstance. He kept his head, but he did not keep his empire. So something to think about when we celebrate this Independence Day. And here's just a question to the chat. Have you ever heard it explained that way? Have you ever heard it explained that way? We've got, Luciano 3 says President Trump walking ahead of Queen Elizabeth meant something good. I mean, yeah, that was obviously, that's certainly what he should have done. Oh, we've got Chibi Chi says, my ribs are amazing. Okay, so we're talking barbecue in the chat. I am cooking. Tomorrow I will be smoking a couple of chickens. That's what's on the menu. I've done ribs recently. I've done brisket recently, and I was like, you know what? It's like 1,000 degrees here, and I just thought, what's a much easier thing that you can't really mess up, but it's also delicious, and that is chicken. And honestly, I haven't decided if I'm going to smoke it yet. I've got 2 birds, and I think I've got them spatchcocked. I've got them brining right now. And what I think I'm going to do, I'm tempted to do, is actually do some direct heat cooking. Because there is something about chicken fat hitting hot charcoals and that smell that just reminds me of my childhood on the 4th of July. And so I've got a pit. Obviously, I've got a big barbecue pit. You guys have heard me talk about it before. 1/4-inch steel, stick burner, the real deal. But the firebox is so big, it also doubles as a grill. And so you can put those coals, way, way down at the bottom of the firebox, and you can actually put your food up there. And so you've got, I don't know how much that is. What is that? 2 feet, 3 feet, something like that of space. And so you can just do a real thin bed of coals and then just slowly direct heat cook the chicken. I don't know. I think that's what I may do tomorrow instead of going up and getting my wood pile and everything else. But I don't know. I haven't decided yet. It's 1,000,000 degrees out here. So I played tennis today. I've got some family in town. I love tennis. They love tennis. I played tennis this morning, And it was about 10 a.m. And man, I mean, it was like, I played pretty good for 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden the heat just hits you, and it's like somebody's sucking the energy out of your body with a syringe. It is so hot. Matter of fact, I believe it is a record for the 4th of July. I think there's going to be something like 300 different records across the country are going to be set tomorrow when it comes to the heat. But yeah, to those of you out there doing ribs, good luck. Happy cooking. We've got no Eva Braun. Sounds delicious either way, Paul. Luce Honoro says, slightly boil your chicken first. I mean, I've never tried that. I've heard of people doing that before. I've got it brining in salt water right now. Oh no. R-Star77. My family has decided not to cook out this year. It's simply too hot. So we'll do something inside, and the thermostats on the air conditioner will be turned down below 78 degrees. Ridiculous. Yes, we will all be anti-Mamdani communists and set our thermostats wherever we please. How about that? But that's sad. I get it. It is so hot out that some people don't even want to barbecue. I know. It's crazy. But tell me, what are you guys cooking? What else? I mean, anybody, you guys are doing ribs. I'm doing chicken. Anybody doing a pork shoulder or even just bratwurst? I mean, some people just want to do hot dogs, hamburgers, bratwursts, stuff like that. Let me know. All right, let's see here. What do we got to do? Let's go to the news, and I'm going to pull our music back up because it's the 250th anniversary that we get to live through. How many think that they will be able to live to the 300th, to the tricentennial? Will any of you out there make it? You think you're going to make it? I don't know. If I'll be like 92. I can't imagine I'm going to care if I'm 92. I don't know. All right. A few headlines here. Zero Hedge. Secret Service missed 102 warnings before Trump assassination attempt in Butler. I have a few thoughts about this, because you always have to be aware of a potential red herring when reports like this come out. New York Post carried it as well. So this is a report from the Epoch Times via Zero Hedge. This is New York Post. Headline: Secret Service member was Googling rooftop location of Trump's would-be assassin when shots rang out in Butler. Now that's a little bit better. But let's go with this first one too, from the Epoch Times. They're writing, the U.S. Secret Service missed multiple opportunities to detect, prevent, and disrupt the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania in 2024, including missing more than 102 radio transmission warnings of a suspicious person. Now, this is all from a report from the Department of Homeland Security. The report, released on July 2nd by the department's Office of Inspector General, chronicles a series of communication failures, inadequate planning, and limited intelligence sharing and security lapses that combined to create the conditions that allowed gunman Thomas Crooks to open fire from the roof of a nearby building during a July 13th, 2024 campaign rally in Butler. Crooks was fatally shot by a Secret Service agent. Among the report's most significant findings was the Secret Service members did not receive 102 radio transmissions that local law enforcement officers in a separate communications room received concerning an increasingly intense search for a suspicious person. Instead, we found that the Secret Service received only 5 phone calls and 3 text messages about Crooks. As a result, Secret Service members did not alert President Trump's protective detail about concerns of a suspicious person. The Secret Service would have delayed Trump's speech or removed him from the stage had they been aware of the search for Crooks. The report also said that Secret Service failed to detect a drone that Crooks flew over the rally site about 2 hours before the shooting. Investigators said the agency's counter-drone system was inoperable because of a malfunction, and the lone operator of said drone system that was assigned to the event lacked sufficient training to repair the equipment. Apparently, he had only received 30 minutes of training on this counter-drone system. The report also found serious communication breakdowns between the Secret Service and local law enforcement. The Secret Service never received 3 radio reports from law enforcement that Crooks had climbed onto a roof with a rifle. The Inspector General also found that classified intelligence concerning long-range threat to Trump was not shared with the Pittsburgh field office or agents responsible for planning security at the rally. The report said broader dissemination of that intelligence likely would have resulted in additional security personnel. Investigators further concluded that the Secret Service failed to ensure the American Glass Research Complex, where Crooks launched the attack, was secured by state and local law enforcement. In addition, the agency did not use available resources to block the rooftop's line of sight to the stage, despite recognizing it as a potential vulnerability. And you've got to remember the female lady boss of the Secret Service said that the roof was sloped. And that's why nobody was up there. The Inspector General issued 7 recommendations to improve protective operations. Secret Service agreed with all of them, and the report said some have already been implemented while others remain in progress. Now, does that satisfy you? Because it certainly doesn't satisfy me, and it shouldn't satisfy you. But let me just tell you what my suspicion about this all is. We already know the Secret Service stood down. At a minimum, they stood down, okay? I don't buy this report at all. I don't buy it because it's being released now. And does anyone really have any questions about the Secret Service? Honestly, does anybody actually have? We all know what happened. We all know this was designed to be successful, number one, and number two, it was also supposed to trigger a civil war because they were still going to give us the same explanation. A sloped roof, and all of us would have assumed the Secret Service or elements of the Secret Service were in on this, okay? But that's why I feel like this is a limited hangout. I feel like this report is a limited hangout, and let me tell you why. I don't want to know about the Secret Service. I want to know about Thomas Crooks. How about you? Do you want to know about Thomas Crooks? I want to know about Thomas Crooks. Thomas Crooks is who I want to know about. I want to know about his multiple cell phones. I want to know why he was cremated so quickly. I want to know about the van that reportedly was there and now we don't ever hear about again. I want to know about Thomas Crooks. I want to know about who Thomas Crooks' friends were. I want to know why Thomas Crooks was in a BlackRock video. I want to know about Thomas Crooks, y'all. That's what I want. I don't want to know about the Secret Service failures because we already know the Secret Service failed. Now, if you're saying, well, if you're saying this leads to somebody in the Secret Service's arrest and imprisonment, okay, but come on now. So I just want you to be aware. I could be wrong here, okay? I could be wrong, but to me, this report is just like, is that really what we care about right now? Or do millions of us refuse to believe that Thomas Crooks acted alone? Now, maybe the Secret Service was, right there with him. I mean, I think you would assume that if Thomas Crooks didn't act alone, the Secret Service would have to be responsible. So I know I'm kind of talking myself out of this claim. But let's just not lose sight of the issue. Let's not lose sight of the focus. The focus needs to be about Thomas Crooks and not about the Secret Service that failed when we already know that the Secret Service has failed. And now another Inspector General, is telling us, they're going to adopt the recommendations of the Inspector General. Oh, thank goodness. Well, we can sleep well at night. Calpurnia 61, Sunday is barbecue ribs, organic broccoli, and baked potatoes. So are you celebrating, am I missing the chat? Are you celebrating on Sunday instead of Saturday? Let's see here. So R-Star says, was going to the Butler rally because I'm close to Butler. We changed our mind at the last minute. Hey, R-Star, do you regret that? You never know. You might have inadvertently been in the line of fire where, Corey Compierre was. Forgive me if I butchered his last name. But do you regret that? I'm just curious. You also say the question is regarding the Secret Service is not if they failed, because they did. The question is about intentionally. It goes back to JFK, and I saw that I'm old. Low 23. Hey Paul, are you barbecuing potatoes tomorrow? No, I'm not barbecuing potatoes. I think we're having somebody's making potatoes, baked potatoes in an oven. But here's the New York Post story. Secret Service member. Now, this is odd. Okay, this is odd. Grilling burgers tomorrow for the 4th. Got it. Secret Service member was Googling rooftop location of Trump's would-be assassin when shots rang out in Butler. Now, that is a little bit different. That's a little different, in my opinion. Victor Nava, writing, a Secret Service counter-drone operator futilely searched the internet for the location of the rooftop President Trump's would-be assassin was spotted on as shots rang out. Okay, so it happened as shots rang out at the July 13th, 2024 campaign rally in Butler. The report concluded Secret Service missed multiple opportunities. So this is the same story with a headline that is designed to make you more interested than you should be. It's the same story based on the report. But hang on, let's read it just to make sure. They missed opportunities. At 6:09 p.m., local law enforcement called the Secret Service. However, the Secret Service communications room supervisor and the agency's counter-drone operator did not ask for the AGR complex location, did not immediately identify it as a risk, and the supervisor did not even recall learning the suspicious person was on the roof because he had delegated communications about the suspicious person to the counter-drone operator because it was a busy time on Secret Service radios, and the counter-drone operator was sitting near him and offered to help, the 64-page report claims. Yeah. Again, Secret Service, we know they did it. And look, I think at a minimum they were given a stand down order or whatever. I mean, you guys know that. But it's the questions about crooks that we need to demand answers for, in my opinion. But you mentioned JFK, R-Star, you mentioned JFK, and so we do have this story here for you. New York Times columnist Ross Douthat asks Paulina Luna directly about the JFK assassination. Let's listen to this, see what it sounds like.
You have to think about it, too, from a historical context, in that Kennedy, after he was assassinated, we go right into Vietnam. I mean, the war machine really does pick up. And the CIA, based on their internal communications about Kennedy, really did look at him like a radical. And they had this aspect of...
All right. So you think the CIA killed Kennedy?
I don't think that the CIA gave the authorization. I think that there was radical factions within the agency that were working with other networks that assassinated Kennedy. And I think it stood to benefit many people, to include the military-industrial complex and to include people that thought that Kennedy was too much of a radical thought leader in the sense that he wanted peace. Because remember, at this point in time,
right? But this is the Oliver Stone and JFK narrative, right? That narrative about Kennedy was for a long time a left-wing narrative. It was a narrative I grew up with that was present among people I knew who were political radicals on the left, who sort of took it for granted that nefarious factions had killed Kennedy so that we wouldn't get into Vietnam. I think Kennedy would have done much the same thing as Vietnam as LBJ. But setting that aside, now we don't have to argue that out.
There's a separate conversation on LBJ.
But now this is...
Yeah, there is a whole separate conversation on LBJ because, I mean, if you look at this from 30,000 foot, who had a lot to gain from killing Kennedy? LBJ. You know, George H.W. Bush as well. And it's just, it's funny, you know, these mainstream journalists, they're just so irrelevant. They are so irrelevant, and they know so much that isn't true. And I mean, you know, the idea, I think Kennedy would have done the same thing that LBJ did in Vietnam. No. You mean the guy that told the CIA that he wasn't down with Operation Northwoods? Operation Northwoods, where they were going to false flag and attack and blame Cuba so that we could go to war in Cuba? He told him no. He said no. He was also working with monetary policy and I think a silver note of some kind. He didn't like the CIA. Okay, he didn't want to do what they wanted to do. He didn't want to do what they wanted to do. He said, I'm going to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter its ashes into the wind. Oh, I think he would have gone to war. It's kind of funny that he says that when Kennedy was murdered and then we went to war. I don't know. It's just crazy. They think they're so smart and yet they can't see what's right in front of them. And by the way, like I think it's also helpful to note that that Oliver Stone movie JFK, which was, which can be written off as something that's left wing because Oliver Stone is, typically thought of as left wing. It really goes to show you how the middle of this country is capable, the middle class in this country is really capable of hearing you out. I mean, we're really capable of hearing your argument. And over the last 50 years, people have been like, you know what? I think our own government had something to do with Kennedy's murder, And then, you have the allegations that H.W. Bush, the future head of the CIA, future president, wasn't in Dallas that day. And then you've got documents that suggest he was in Dallas that day. And it was all done by Lee Harvey Oswald, who, the whole thing is, and it didn't matter. I mean, this goes to show you how irrelevant these journalists are. Do you remember when, and I'm going to make a poll up. I would say a majority of Republican voters believe that our government had something to do with the murder of JFK. I think if you polled them right now, that's what they would think. And yet, somehow we survived Bill O'Reilly's Killing book series, where he wrote a book called Killing Kennedy, and he propped up the official Lee Harvey Oswald narrative. Just took it hook, line, and sinker. Then he had all these other killing. He had Killing Jesus. He had all these other books. But we survived that because the American people just don't believe that. Sorry, we don't believe that it was Lee Harvey Oswald. Certainly not alone, right? And which brings us back to Thomas Crooks. Okay. That also brings you back to Tyler Robinson as well, by the way, which we don't talk about enough on this program. And of course, where I'm waiting on the trial to commence. But there's things about that, and I've talked to Rob about it. I've talked to Eric about it. There's things about that make no sense to me. The official narrative, but we'll dive into that some other time. When I just want to see it all play out in the courts first. But so yeah, Ross Douthat, living in 1995, still stuck in 1995 with his anti-conspiracy theory. I'm a mainstream media journalist. Yeah, exactly. All right, real quick, I've got to take a break. I want to remind you right now, before we go to break, to buy my red light panels. They are not my red light panels, but I consider them my red light panels. redvivehealth.org/Paul. Save 35%. I got my whole family using this thing now because it's so beneficial. Red light and near-infrared light, 2 different wavelengths on the spectrum. You need the red light to help skin collagen, anti-aging, energy. It helps your eyes, especially if you're surrounded by blue light all the time like I am. The red light will help you sleep. And then the near-infrared light is really the biohack. Photobiomodulation, stimulating the mitochondria of your cells. The near-infrared light in these panels penetrates. When you're 6 to 12 inches, it actually penetrates into your skin, into your organs, into your bones, into your deep tissues, into your subcutaneous fat, stimulates the mitochondria, increases blood flow, great for healing, great for feeling better. You need to look into it. If you have chronic pain, if you have chronic inflammation, you've got to try Red Light before you continue on this medical industrial complex hamster wheel that is just wanting to drive you into the arms of Big Pharma so you're a permanent slave. I mean customer. So try it out now, redvivehealth.org/Paul. That's redvivehealth.org/Paul, and here is a little bit more about it.
For centuries, light has been used to heal. Awaken the body with Redvive.
Why is Redvive different? What sets it apart? What sets us apart from the standard red light panels? This is a medical grade device, and what that means is the red light bulbs and the near infrared bulbs have very specific wavelengths. If you think about the wavelength as the medicine, the 635, the 670, the 810, the 850, those were specifically chosen because those are the most powerful effectors of the cells. So those specific wavelengths, when they get into our body, when they affect our tissue, they spike energy production, they help with nerve pain control, they increase stem cell counts. There's very specific mechanisms that those specific wavelengths work at, and that's the medicine. So if you think of, say, medicine as an Advil or a specific steroid or a blood pressure medication, the wavelength is the medication. The other part of that, whenever you take a medication, is dose. Right? So you have the medication. So if you take 1 milligram of Advil and the average dose of an Advil is 200 milligrams to 800 milligrams, it's not going to work. That doesn't mean the medicine's bad. It just means you didn't take enough. Right? And so even if you have the right wavelengths, first you have to have the right medicine, and then you have to have the right dose. And to have the right dose, you have, in light therapy, you have to have enough energy. So you have to have a powerful bulb. The LED bulbs, or light emitting diodes, have a specific wavelength, and that wavelength is the medicine. And the wavelengths that have been studied and published on that are the most powerful in affecting healing and the changes that we want to see with our bodies and our health are the 635 wavelength, the 670, 810 nanometer wavelength, and 850 nanometer wavelength. Those are all going to affect the mitochondria, the cytochrome C oxidase, and affect those powerful long-term changes and affect that downstream pathways. And that's what you get with Redvive devices. The highest efficacy, the best wavelengths, concentrated to help your health.
MyPillow's second annual mega sale is finally here. Get our patented premium MyPillows that adjust to your exact individual needs to give you the best sleep of your life.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
Now for the lowest price ever. Kings, $19.98, Queens, only $18.98. And Giza Dream Bed Sheets, the best sheets in history, for as low as $29.98. Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, towels that actually dry you, what a concept, now only $39.98. And our made in the USA mattresses and mattress toppers as low as $99.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But that's not all. Order right now and we'll ship your order absolutely free.
This is our family dog, Bubba. He is a Shorty Jack Russell, and he brings a lot of love and laughter into our home. We just want to thank Pet Club for making healthy food and treats for our animals. Bubba has been on Pet Club food for a little over a year now. He really likes the Sequoia dry food, and then I put a scoop of the Sequoia wet dog food in there with some hot water and stir it up, and he absolutely loves it. And he likes the mush puppies, but his ultimate favorite is the antlers. Those keep him busy for a really long time, and he really likes them. It makes us feel really good that the food and treats that we give him have healthy ingredients in them because we want him to be around for a really long time. Our previous dog was a lab, and his name was Titus, and we fed him in bulk, and we would just get his food from the big box grocery stores. And unfortunately, that food wasn't very healthy for him, and he ended up getting cancer and passing away. So we didn't want to make that mistake with Bubba, so we were really fortunate to find Pet Club and find some really healthy food for him to eat. So we would just like to thank Pet Club and We just really appreciate the healthy food that they make, so we can keep this guy around as long as we can.
The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. It is a day before July 4th, Independence Day, 250 years. Will we see another 50? In our current state, in our current iteration, a lot of things got to change for that to happen, in my opinion. But we got to get comfortable with old definitions, in my opinion. So I found this during the break. And it's, it's a funny post. I don't even know who this guy is, Miles Smith. I have no idea. He says this. He says, never ask a woman her age, a man how much money he makes, a legacy evangelical Christian, what the Latin roots of patriotism and nationalism are. Now, why would you not want to ask an evangelifish, what the Latin roots of patriotism and nationalism are? Why would you not want to do that? Well, James Baird, who has written a lot of good books about this subject, he's a pastor. He's written a book called King of Kings, a man by the name of James Baird. You should check it out. He says, patriot. The word patriot is from, as we all celebrate patriotism, is from the Latin root patrios, which means of one's fathers. The word nation from natio equals birth. So as we're all upset, rightfully so, about the Supreme Court decision on birthright citizenship, now you know one of the reasons why you should be. Maybe a more specific reason why you should be is because we are completely in this little blip of the late 20th century and into the 21st century. We are completely redefining our terms or ignoring the definitions of certain words. You also, by the way, you hear this phrase a lot from people that are like, I do not agree with ethno-nationalism. Well, if you go and you look up, I think it's the Greek of ethno, you're essentially saying, I disagree with nation nationalism. Because it was understood forever what a nation is. And I say it on the show all the time. Common ancestry, common language. That's what it has always been expected to be. And we are trying to essentially undo how man has lived for thousands of years. And we think we're slapping ourselves on the back, telling us that, we're more virtuous than our forefathers. And no, that doesn't mean you hate other people. That doesn't mean you can't, as a Christian, you cannot do that. But we're being told that the basic idea and structure of the family, which goes out to your community or your church or your city, and just the whole purpose, the whole mechanism for populating communities and then developing nations of one's father, patriot, patros, we're being told that, and it's no wonder that we're being told to not, that's somehow wrong at the same time when Western nations are being overrun by third world barbarian hordes. So don't even notice it, don't think about it, and if you do notice it, now you're a bigot, now you're a racist. So on this 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Go check out the word Patriot, as we all may be watching. Maybe tonight I will watch Mel Gibson's Patriot, either tonight or tomorrow. Patriot from Patrios, of one's father. Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that interesting? But they're taking our language away from us in a lot of this. And here is the result. You ready? This is from Birmingham. Birmingham police over across the pond. Hey, man, you was a white man and you was rustling up with some of those immigrants. You were wrestling with them immigrants. They were wrestling with you, but you were there, so I'm going to assume you're the guilty one, mate. That's what I'm going to assume. Anyway, this is... Forgive me. So I want you to watch this clip, and it has outraged people across, really across the world.
Do not fucking punch his fight. Put your hands behind your back.
Put your hands behind your back. So yeah, this is a common reoccurrence. We can kind of watch on a loop here if we want. Here's the breakdown again. You've got some English blacks that are ganging around a white man. The white man then gets pushed to the ground and assaulted, and then the white guy is immediately checked up against the wall by a female white police officer. He doesn't know what's going on, so he tries to swing a haymaker, and now he's in jail for hitting the police officer. The Birmingham Police Department, they have posted this over on X. And they say this: the incident has been reviewed, and we have no concerns over the officers' actions, and we are satisfied that they were reasonable and proportionate with the circumstances. We would ask that footage is not further shared to allow for legal process to take its course. So readers have added context here, saying that the footage in question disproves the police's account of this incident. It is in the public interest for it to be shared far and wide to ensure a just outcome for the male who has been arrested and aid him with any civil action he may wish to take against the police. Again, the biblical concept of government is that you have the sword to punish the wicked and the guilty and to protect the innocent. And I don't know what happened leading up to this. I don't exactly know, but just from this one clip, it seems insane, and it also seems par for the course, just like the guy that was stabbed to death, and he was arrested. The immigrant was believed, the white man was assumed to be racist, and bled to death on the streets. And you know why? It's because they don't know the Latin word. They don't know the Latin root of the word patriot. That's kind of where I'm at with it. So many communistic, Marxist presuppositions that people have been duped into believing it's like a spell. And, you know, I'm sure that white lady cop went home thinking that she's the virtuous one in the situation, when in the long run, their whole society is going to collapse. And to answer my question about, where is the tipping point? You know, somebody was talking about, as we were reading the Declaration last hour, this tipping point. We've tried with our votes, but now they're messing with our elections even more, and they're allowing the blue states to count until they get the desired result they want, and all this other stuff. And my statement was essentially, I don't even know if it's possible for a first world country with the technology, the surveillance technology, the drone capabilities. I don't even know if it's possible anymore for some sort of American Revolution in a modern day Western country to take place. I'm not really sure. But collapse is always kind of a built-in option as well, that you never know what can happen when the society. People thought the Soviet Union would never collapse, right? So you never know how this is all going to be handled. But citizens are not going to, citizens can only take so much. As the Declaration of Independence says, they can overlook injustice for a while, but over time it gets really difficult. So yeah, this is an interesting story about Gavin Newsom. The FBI under Joe Biden sent in a mole to wear a wire inside Newsom's inner circle. A mole working for the Biden FBI was secretly recording Gavin Newsom's inner circle before the agency expanded its corruption probe into the California governor and his wife, according to a bombshell report by the New York Post. Democrat insider Alexis Podesta, no relation to John or the Podestas, a 45-year-old Sacramento consultant and Newsom appointee, secretly taped conversations for the FBI as early as June 2024 while Joe Biden was still in the White House. According to McGregor Scott, the former U.S. attorney now representing Dana Williamson, 53, ran Newsom's office as chief of staff until late 2024. In May, she pled guilty to conspiracy to commit bank fraud and wire fraud while filing a false tax return and lying to federal agents. Federal prosecutors accused Williamson and others of orchestrating the scheme to siphon $225,000 from a dormant campaign account which belonged to former HHS Secretary Xavier Becerra, disguising the payments as legitimate consulting fees while routing the money to benefit Becerra's former chief of staff, Sean McCluskey. According to Podesta's attorney, she was placed in charge of overseeing the account in question but did not know the payments were improper. So here's the deal. This is me just reading between the lines, and this is speculative. But I think Joe Biden's FBI, I think the intelligence oligarchy, they want dirt on Gavin Newsom. And I think you would say, well, why would Joe Biden's FBI investigate one of their own? Well, the same reason why the FBI investigated Hillary Clinton. The intel oligarchy wants the dirt to keep Clinton in line, right? I think they want dirt on Newsom to keep Newsom in line, to hold over his head. You know, if you're going to be in office, we want blackmail on you, and I think that's what this was. I think people knew in the Democrat Party that, hey, Newsom was a obvious choice in the future for the Democrats, could be president. So let's go ahead and do an investigation. Let's get the evidence. Let's get him dead to rights. And then when he runs for president, we'll be able to control him and get what we want. And that's how this game works, and it's sick. And I think that's what you're seeing right here with this report. I could be wrong about that. And I would love to hear your opinion on that. Like, am I right? Am I wrong? What do you think? John Yarder says, are there any Democrats that are not corrupt? No. No, I don't think so. But, I mean, the same can be said for Republicans if we're being honest. Let's see. Mike in Miami says, Butler is clearly a DEI failure. Former Marine security for ES here. Basically, you stand on the stage and look at every surface in a rifle range and cover it. Yeah, you would think, right? So at a bare minimum, they were standing down. Again, my question is not about the Secret Service, though. I mean, I'm reporting on the Secret Service, and I'm reporting on these reports, but my question is about Thomas Crooks, and so you got to be careful. Like, we've got to still be vocal about this. Got to still be vocal. Bingo. John Earl says, bingo, Paul. Now, so you're talking about my assertion that this is an op done to get blackmail on Newsom in case he runs for higher office. Yes, I think that's right. I think most people would agree with that. Most people. In other news, in a weird occurrence, Michelle Obama and her brother interviewed Will Ferrell for a podcast where they discussed an unusual strategy for getting boys to quit fighting.
And the guys, it's been one punch.
Yeah.
And they're like, ah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody fights anymore.
Right.
But right. We told our boys that if you guys can fight.
Yeah.
but when you're done, you have to kiss and make up on the mouth.
Okay, I like that.
And it ended everything. How about that?
Who thought of that?
Kelly.
Okay.
That's so good.
I was like, where'd you get that?
Really?
Yes.
It's like, well done.
Well done. Well
It's
done.
like, ew.
Yeah.
Viv was...
The larger story here is that the Democrats are admitting that two guys kissing is gross. Shocker. Two brothers that are fighting don't want to kiss each other on the lips, and so they'd rather just not fight. Because what is the psychology behind it when another man sees two guys kissing like on a TV? It's like the equivalent of looking at maggots on a dead corpse. Like that's the guttural reaction there. So I don't know. It's just kind of weird to me. I don't know. Would any of you, in what world of parenting do you have two boys who fight just like all siblings fight and get physical with one another? In what world would you ever create that rule? And by the way, how do you enforce it? How do you enforce it? Because, I mean, and maybe they're just, surely they're just making this up for a podcast. I don't know. But like, if I ever heard that, like, oh, I'm going to kiss my brother on the mouth because we're fighting. Okay. I'd like to see you enforce that rule. Like you know, I think most people would turn violent against their own parents if they tried to enforce that rule. Anyway, that's weird. In other news, kind of related to me anyway. The Odyssey is due to hit theaters soon. Couple of weeks. The Odyssey. So they keep putting out in these new trailers. The Odyssey, you know, Matt Damon. Allegedly, they've got that, what's her name? Not Ellen Page. She goes by a different name now because, you know, she's a woman that's pretending to be a man and had a double mastectomy. They cast her allegedly as Achilles, one of the mightiest Greek demigods of all time. But they also cast this lady allegedly on film. The black actress that you see on your film there is supposed to be Helen of Troy. And people are not here for this. We could have had a masterpiece. We could have had Christopher Nolan, the guy who directed arguably the best superhero movie ever, The Dark Knight, really do a good job of the Greek epic, The Odyssey. But instead, we get a movie full of people that aren't Greek. We get a movie full of people that aren't Greek, again, because we don't know the definition. We don't know the Latin root. We don't know the Greek root of nation, ethnos, and we don't know the Latin root of patrios, patriot. But it's been ratioed. If you'll see here, Nerdrotic, which is a great follow, by the way. And this, I don't know what the ratio is on it now because this is 2 days old. But it had 32,000 likes and 43,000 dislikes. And that's a big deal. A lot of this is happening with modern Hollywood where the dislikes, it's so bad that in some cases YouTube doesn't even want to show you the dislikes anymore. They let you dislike it, but they don't show you the number because they don't want the fans, they don't want normal fans to actually tell the studios that you guys are making slop. You guys are making woke slop. Let's see here. I wonder if there's an update at all. Real quick, I just want to go check out Nerdrotic's X account here. Yeah, Supergirl was a monstrous flop as well. So yeah, there's this Jeremy Clarkson, Helen of Troy. They're making fun. You know, this lady here is supposed to be the most beautiful woman in the world that a war would be started for, and everybody objectively says no. That's just not the case. That's not true. That's not right. And so now people are making posters of Samuel L. Jackson, Helen of Troy, Christopher Nolan in IMAX. Oh, now, I mean, people want to try to defend the movie and say, well, look, Helen of Troy is only at the beginning of the Odyssey. Elliot Page as Achilles is only at the beginning of the Odyssey because, that's the Iliad. That's the end of the Iliad and the beginning of the Odyssey. And so don't worry about it. Now it's Odysseus' story. And that's where Matt Damon is going to come in and save the day. And that's fine. I mean, well, I don't know how, but it just, the whole thing seems to me that it's going to be a bunch of woke nonsense. In order to make this movie, he had to check a bunch of boxes. And so this is kind of the remnant. I mean, they've been working on this movie for several years now. When they started on the Odyssey, wokeism, DEI, all that nonsense was still in vogue. It was still the way to go. It was still the requirement. And the pendulum is swinging back the other way. I mean, they still want to bring it back, but the pendulum is swinging back the other way. Which means that if we were, and you know what, many people want to give up on movies, and that's fine. I've been watching older movies and having a blast because they don't try to brainwash you as hard. They're not as good at brainwashing you way back in the day as they are now, or attempting to brainwash you. So yeah, most of the modern day movies are terrible. But from a pop culture standpoint, if you are going to get better movies in the future, you're gonna have to wait because as the cult, they used to be trendsetters, but now they are very much behind the eight ball because people are not watching. They don't want to see this nonsense. Supergirl is now set to lose $100 million because they, number one, got another woke actress who couldn't keep her mouth shut. But number two, they got somebody who really isn't, I'm just being real, is really just not attractive enough for the part. I mean, it just is what it is. I'm not even really sure. It was shot very poorly, in my opinion. So there's been a few reports about this, that the Trump administration is now moving to surge worksite ICE raids after the Supreme Court decision on birthright citizenship. R.N. McIntyre writes that this is excellent because this is the most immediate remedy to the terrible SCOTUS ruling. Employers are the key. Illegals without jobs or benefits will self-deport. And this is true. And however, unfortunately, in towards the end of Trump's first year in the second administration, we did get the statement saying, hey, look, hotels, service industry, we're not going to go as hard. We're not going to go as hardcore on those. And so this is, you would hope that this is an accurate report and that we actually start getting more deportations. And there have been a lot. We got headlines that, in the last 5 days, they deported like 10,000 people. But we're looking at, we're looking at millions of people that need to go. If you want to actually save the country faster or have a shot at saving and reversing what's going on. Reverse the great replacement, re-immigration. Real quick, check in on the comments here. Mike in Miami writes, older movies understand subtlety, kind of like romance versus sex. I can see where you're going there. I did a segment a couple of months ago on how the greatest movies of all time have famous scenes where it's just men telling women no. Gone with the Wind, Scarlet, Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Then you've got the Maltese Falcon, where he sends the lady to jail even though she loves him, but she killed his partner, and he's like, yeah, I love you, but sorry, you're going to jail. No, I'm not going to run off with you. No, yes, you are going to jail. And then there's some others as well. Casablanca, I think, is my favorite. And that's not necessarily, that's telling a woman no, but it flies in the face of the existential movements of today, where all the main characters are like, I got to find out about myself. I got to find out who I am. I got to explore and break free. And instead, you've got Humphrey Bogart, who's just like, look, you got to get on the plane. The problems of two of us don't amount to a hill of beans compared to like the greater war that I got to worry about in humanity. And like, I'm sorry, yeah, I want to be with you, but I can't. I've got to sacrifice what I want for the good of other people. That's what old movies used to be. That's what they used to be. Broken Nova, The Goonies is a classic. Yeah, I have gone back and watched The Goonies. I mean, you see some of the pushing of the envelope there, but the 80s movies are for the most part, totally fine. But at the time there were people that would watch 80s movies and they would say that they were scandalous, and they were right? I mean, largely the 1950s rock and roll moms were right. That's what I've come to believe as a 42-year-old man. The 1950s rock and roll moms were right. And speaking of rock and roll, this is a perfect segue into what I really want to talk about the rest of the show, if I can, which would be this. Have you seen this headline? Kind of a positive sign. Billboard.com reported last year in October that no rap songs are in the Billboard Hot 100's top 40 for the first time since 1990. 25 years. As one long-running hip-hop smash goes recurrent on the chart, the Hot 100's top 40 does not boast a single rap song, ending a streak that's lasted for over 35 years. With Kendrick Lamar and whoever that is, their 13-week Billboard Hot 100 number one, Luther, falling off the Hot 100, dated October 25th, 2025, there were officially no rap songs in the chart's top 40 last week. Again, this was last year, October. The highest-ranking rap song, defined as a song deemed eligible for charting on Billboard's Hot Rap Songs listing, on the October 25th Hot 100 was Youngboy Never Broke Again's Shot Callin' at number 44, Cardi B's Safe, Big Xantha's Plug, Hell at Night. Listen to these. This is just insane. All right, whatever. So the last time before that, when there were zero rap songs in the top 40 of the Hot 100, when was that? You have to go all the way back to February 2nd of 1990, when the top-ranking rap song was Biz Markie's eventual top 10 hit, Just a Friend, which had just climbed to number 41. So it says here that the reason for this change, okay, this is the official narrative, is that recent rule changes to Billboard's Hot 100 methodology did play a part in the streak coming to an end. For the chart dated October 25th, descending songs were deemed recurrent and removed from the chart if they had exceeded certain durations on the chart, while also falling below certain updated chart thresholds. For instance, if they had fallen below number 25 after spending over 26 weeks on the chart, that particular change resulted in the departure of Luther, which had fallen to number 38. However, with Luther and 7 other songs in the Hot 100's top 40 going recurrent on October 25th, the chart, okay, no rap songs. We get it. So why else? What's the official narrative? Why else? The lack of rap songs in the Hot 100's top 40, it says, is the latest sign of a recent dip in rap's commercial dominance. Hip-hop's overall market share reached a peak in 2020 when it earned 30%. That had slipped to just over 25% in 2023 and has been at 24% so far in 2025 through the week of October 23rd. In the Hot 100 chart for the equivalent chart 5 weeks ago, a whopping 16 of the 40 songs were rap. Then it says this: it is worth noting that the rap world is currently in a bit of an in-between moment with some of its biggest names. And again, this was October of 2025. They say Drake, the biggest chart mainstay over the last 15 years, has not yet released his much-anticipated Iceman album, while his 2024 foe Lamar is finally somewhat dormant following an 18-month period of cultural and commercial domination. However, the last few months have not been totally without big rap releases with Cardi B and Big and I don't know, whatever these people's names are. Anyway, the point is, some people, ladies and gentlemen, think that this glut of rap music conspicuously coincides with Marco Rubio getting rid of USAID funding for the most part. We've already had people say that the communist leftists are losing elections in South America after USAID was defunded. Now the right wing is winning down there. something that you would imagine would be near and dear to somebody like Marco Rubio's goals or heart, or dare I say, patrios. But now we have something a little different. The question is now got to be asked, has USAID, has the CIA via USAID been propping rap music up and all of its degeneracy to infect our culture and demoralize us as a nation? Because make no mistake, that's what I think rap music does in general. I found this Instagram post 20 hours ago. It says that Joe Rogan asks if USAID was used to promote mumble rap. Joe Rogan raised eyebrows Thursday by questioning whether the U.S. Agency for International Development played a role in boosting rap's music popularity. Speaking on episode 2522 of the Joe Rogan Experience with comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, released the same day, Rogan pointed out the rare current absence of rap songs on the Billboard charts. People are pointing out that right now it's one of the rare times where no rap music is on the charts, he said. And they're saying, how does this coincide with USAID? Was USAID actively promoting rap music? USAID was defunded by July of 2025. October rolls around, and all of a sudden, there's no rap songs in the top 40. It is interesting. But it is not without precedent. We've talked about on this show briefly. I've never really brought the receipts, but you can look up how the CIA funded the women's lib movement to double the tax base and also destroy the American family. They did this through women's liberation magazines. But you can go back even further than that to the 40s, and I've got some articles for you. This is from October 21st, 1995. It was written in The Independent by a man by the name of Stoner Saunders, or Stoner Saunders. Fantastic name. He says, modern art was CIA weapon. It's been revealed how the spy agency used unwitting artists such as Jackson Pollock and D. Kooning in a cultural Cold War. For decades in art circles, it was either a rumor or a joke, but now it is confirmed as a fact. The Central Intelligence Agency used American modern art, including the works of artists such as Jackson Pollock, as a weapon in the Cold War. In the manner of a Renaissance prince, except that it acted secretly, the CIA fostered and promoted American abstract expressionist paintings around the world for more than 20 years. So, I just want to make an observation here. I cannot stand abstract art. I've always disliked abstract art. And now I think it's safe to say that most people really didn't like it either, because it had to be promoted by the CIA. I would venture a guess that most people, and while I know there's plenty of white girls in wedding dresses these days at their weddings that like to dance to rap music, that was not always the case. I suspect that the majority of Americans, if it hadn't been for rap music being artificially promoted, would not have naturally gravitated to that culture and to that style of music. I'm old enough to remember where music teachers used to say that rap is not real music, which is probably from systemic racism and white culture. But I'm old enough to remember where people would actually say that. The 80s and the early 90s. So it's pretty fascinating. Here's another one. The BBC, was modern art a weapon of the CIA? This is from October of 2016 by a guy by the name of Alistair Sook. He says the abstract expressionists emerged from obscurity in the late 1940s to establish New York as the center of the art world, but some say they became pawns of U.S. spies in the Cold War. The point is this phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen, is not without precedent. The leader of the band Smashing Pumpkins. Now, first off, can we just take a moment? Rock and roll used to be the thing that was promoted. And again, I just got through telling you that the 1950s rock and roll moms were right. I mean, I've gone back and listened to the lyrics that I used to listen to, in a lot of this music. And I can't believe my parents let me listen to it. Matter of fact, I think I know why. They didn't understand what the lyrics were. They literally could not understand what is being said. But I think largely they were right. But rock and roll basically kind of went away overnight in the late 90s into the 2000s. It was all pop music and then hip hop. And it happened overnight. So Billy Corgan is the lead singer, or I don't even know, I don't even know if the Smashing Pumpkins make music anymore. But he did a podcast, and he said, quote, "Some people assert that the CIA was involved in all that. Again, above my pay grade, but I saw it happen. I did witness it happen." Now, this tweet is a little misleading. The tweet says Billy Corgan believes rock music was purposely dialed down by outside forces in the late 90s. I think this quote is actually Billy Corgan saying that the CIA had something to do with boosting rap. It doesn't really matter, because if the CIA comes in and boosts rap, it's obviously going to diminish whatever the current thing is. And in the early 90s, we still had rock music on the forefront of things. And then it just went away. Now, some people out there claim that it was because of like Woodstock in like 1999. I know there was a Woodstock in 1999, and you had this guy Limp Bizkit who was rallying all of these violent, rage-filled white people to his music. And this is something that was thought of as not a good thing for the government to see a big movement of music where it's predominantly focused on white people and being strong, rage-filled. I mean, I think Limp Bizkit had songs that were like, break stuff or break something. And then he also obviously had things that contributed to the sexual degeneracy of our population as well. I'm not picking rock and roll over rap necessarily. I can tell you which one I'd rather listen to, which would be rock and roll all day long. But my point is that our intel oligarchy has been weaponized against us for much longer than when they framed Donald Trump for treason. And I know you guys out there probably know this or are aware of it, but it is interesting that there are some, like Joe Rogan and others, who are saying the fact that rap music is no longer on the top 100, and I'm pretty sure it's happening again this year too. In 2026, is it because the CIA funding via USAID has dried up? The USAID funding being directed by the CIA, has it really all dried up? And there's really just not the market for it? That it's all just a fake market? That bleeds into different areas. I mean, if you really think about it, it's the whole rap culture thing is. It's just really a desert of morality. So, I don't know. Tell me what you think about it. I'm going to take a break. We're going to wind things down here. When we come back, America's 250th is tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're excited about it. Where we've been, where we're going, the possibilities, the pitfalls, the promise. We have to be optimistic. We have to demand accountability. We have to keep going, but we have to be optimistic because that's what we're called to do. We're called to go forth. We're called to multiply. We're called to subdue the earth. And you do that in every sphere of your life, from your, from your personal walk with the Lord to your family, to your church, to your community, to your country. And that's what we're called to do in all aspects, all spheres of our life and our influence. And so that's what we're going to continue to do. And we're going to be grateful. We're going to be grateful. We should be grateful. Things could be a lot worse. We do not deserve even though we have higher prices in some cases and we're dealing with everything that we've dealt with, we don't deserve what we do have. We don't deserve what we do have. We don't deserve it. And yet, we have it because God has allowed it. And so we should be thankful for that. We're going to take a quick break and be back here in just a moment. Do not go anywhere.
MyPillow's second annual mega sale is finally here. Get our patented premium MyPillows that adjust to your exact individual needs to give you the best sleep of your life.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
Now for the lowest price ever. Kings, $19.98. Queens, only $18.98. And Giza Dream bed sheets, the best sheets in history, for as low as $29.98. Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, towels that actually dry you. What a concept. Now only $39.98. And our made in the USA mattresses and mattress toppers as low as $99.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But that's not all. Order right now and we'll ship your order absolutely free.
I had 5 units that I purchased for the practice right out of the chute. Well, those went the first week that I got back to Houston. So then we ordered another 5 and then another 5. And I think over the next, 6 to 8 weeks, we had ordered like 35 units. And they're gone. They're still gone out of the practice. So we're excited about moving more of these units for our patients because they need them. And so when you bring in new technology and your staff's thinking, oh, this is another thing that I need to handle during the day, I think it's a good idea to give them a little incentive. And I do it as a team. So if one person does well, the whole team does well. So they all support each other. And they got really excited about that. They love it. They'll bring a unit in, turn it on, put it on the patient's foot or leg, and they'll tell the patients, be sure to talk to Dr. Parker about red light therapy. And the patient will say, red light therapy, yeah, I've heard of that, And so I'll walk in and my nurse is she'll tell me, I've spoken to Mrs. Jones about this red light therapy, and she's really excited about it. So Red Vibe has been fantastic for our bottom line.
The Paul Harrell Program.
Hey folks, welcome back to the show. I hope everybody has a fantastic Independence Day celebration. I appreciate all of the comments and all of that stuff, folks. I appreciate this great audience over at LFA TV. I want to remind everybody, if you're watching on YouTube, the Paul Harrell Program, please go subscribe to the Paul Harrell Program YouTube channel. I would very, very much appreciate it as we try to grow that channel. I am not going to leave here today without playing. I don't care, really. I don't care. Copyrights. Who cares? Who cares? This is America. This is America. If you've never seen the musical 1776, here's a sample.
Now then, attend, as friend to friend, our declaration committee. For us I see immortality in Philadelphia City. A farmer, a lawyer.
All right, now I'm going to go to the next one here. Hang on.
The eagle.
They're arguing over the eagle or the turkey.
The
eagle or the turkey.
The eagle, the turkey.
The eagle is a majestic bird.
The eagle is a scavenger, a thief, and a coward. A symbol of over 10 centuries of European mischief.
The turkey.
The turkey is a truly noble bird, Native American, source of sustenance of our original settlers, an incredibly brave fellow who will not flinch at attacking a regiment of Englishmen, single-handedly. Therefore, the national bird of America is going to be...
The eagle.
The eagle.
We're waiting for the chirp, chirp, chirp of an eaglet being born. Waiting for the chirp, chirp, chirp on this humid Monday morning in this congressional incubator.
God knows the temperature's hot enough to hatch a stone, let alone an egg.
Really can't plan this any better because it is so hot outside.
We're waiting for the scratch, scratch, scratch of that tiny little fellow. Waiting for the egg to hatch on this humid Monday morning in this congressional incubator. God knows the temperature's hot enough to hatch a stone.
But will it hatch an egg?
The Declaration will be a triumph. I tell you, a triumph. If I was ever sure of anything, I'm sure of that. A triumph. And if it isn't, we've still got 4 days left to think of something else.
The eagle's going to crack the shell of the egg that England laid. Yes, so we can tell on this humid Monday morning in this congressional incubator.
And just as Tom here has written, though the shell may belong to Great Britain, the eagle inside belongs to us.
And just as Tom here has written, we say to hell with Great Britain, the eagle inside belongs to us.
Honestly, I mean, yeah, I know it's corny and I know it's a musical and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of different ways to obviously tell this story. And it's a story that just gets told once a year and then we forget. And then everything else about America is always, we never like, okay, what would the founders do? It's like, well, you know, what would FDR do? You know? Or what would Harry Truman do? And they're never, it's just, have you noticed this? It's just, to me, it's like, well, this is America's origin story. And so many in power today only allow it to inform tomorrow. And they don't allow it to inform how we should be doing things today. Because the fact of the matter is, we look very different today than we did back then. The government itself functions much differently. But, as I said, we're not blackpilling here, okay? Because we know that the God of heaven is in control of all of this. But we also are not going to be silent about what we're seeing. And we're actually going to use the American founding to demand the government our fathers gave us. Demand it back. And it wasn't a secular, live and let live. Oh, our blessings of liberty. We have to let kids go to drag shows just for them. No. And this is the good thing. People are waking up, man. It's not just, obviously, my generation is kind of split. Millennials, Gen X is kind of split. The Zoomer generation, not as much split, I don't think, but they kind of are. But then you got the Gen Alpha, and they're done with it. They're done with the political correctness. They're done with all of it. And so that actually is very, very encouraging. So you guys have a great time tomorrow. Celebrate Independence Day. If you got a family, go read the grievances of the Declaration of Independence. If you haven't, check them out. See if that doesn't sound a little familiar as we go. And I'm going to be back here on Monday with bells on. Hopefully Rob and Eric will be with me. I hope you have a blessed day. Be safe. Come back with all 10 of your fingers and toes. And toes, you never know. And we will see you next time. Happy 250 years. Happy Independence Day.